Sit back and relax as today's program guides you through all things pop culture and the deepest corners of the internet. Warning, may cause brain rot. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brain Rot. I'm your host, Maya V. Henry, and we are going to dive into it today. I know it's been a while, but I'm happy to see all of you lovely people back here again on YouTube. I mean, I can't visually see you, but I feel you and your energy here. Thank you for bearing with me. I know we have little ebbs and flows with the podcast and how often we get episodes, but I'm getting back into the swing of things with the pod. And we're just going to have an episode where we gab, where we yap, and where I catch you guys up on what's been going on in my life. And we just talk about the current state of affairs that are going on in the world and just like everything all at once. We're going to get into it. That's pretty much all I want to say to summarize today's episode. Halloween has came and gone, and I am normally a big Halloween fan, and I was very busy, so I'm sad that I didn't get to a podcast episode in costume with you guys. But I did 2 costumes this year. I did Misa Imain from Death Note, and I also did Kris Jenner from Keeping Up with the Kardashians, or just life. And my Halloween party that I ended up throwing, if you guys like follow me on live streams and stuff, I was talking about it a little bit. It was a huge bash, and I loved it. It was so fun. I had a little smoke machine going, and for all of our YouTube watchers, I'm just going to run some footage of what the Halloween party was like. When I throw a party or a gathering, I like to have decor, like to have a bit of drinks. I like to have some food. You have to have the trifecta, right? Decor, food, and drinks. That is what makes a good party, in my opinion. And I really wanted to go all out. I had the bathroom decked out with these little skeleton fetuses floating around in black water, and then "Help Me" written in blood on the wall. I had a little BDSM bachelor in my bedroom, a life-size skeleton chained up with a literal special instrument on the pelvis, and, you know, a disco hat, some fun lights, everything good to go. And then I also had just, you know, decor all throughout the apartment and a smoke machine that would go off and fun lighting. And the smoke machine really helps the ambience and the lighting and stuff. So it was overall just so much fun, and I definitely recommend throwing themed parties if you like gatherings and are a bit extroverted and want to have fun with your friends. I will say I do wish I invited more people. I let my social anxieties get the better of me, and I was like, I don't know how big my apartment is. I don't know how many people could fit. I don't really throw parties or anything. So around like 14 people came, I think, which sounds like a decent number, but I definitely think my apartment could have fit like 25 people. And so I just felt like there was a little bit of dead space. But other than that, it was the perfect party. We even carved pumpkins in advance for it and just really felt like I was getting into the Halloween spirit, which I love. I loved my costume too. Unfortunately, I didn't get like an amazing photo or anything in it, and I was kind of hoping to do a reel, but you know, I was throwing this party last minute. I had like a week's notice. But then I went to another Halloween event that my friend Juliana invited me to on behalf of the Sorry Girls. They host a Halloween party because their channel was kind of founded on the idea of DIY Halloween costumes and looks and things. And then they branched out into a full brand with many DIY concepts and home living and stuff like that. So they throw a big bash every year, and I was lucky to be invited, and I went with my sister, and we had a little duo costume moment. She was Kim, I was Chris, and I will say I had way more fun in that costume because I felt like I got to play a character, and I borrowed my sister's Betty Boop wig, so it was like a super affordable, easy to do costume, and so much fun. I definitely recommend going for a character or like something comedic that you can really play up on Halloween because it just adds to your own enjoyment of the holiday. Another elephant in the room is that this is my first podcast episode with bangs. I recently got them done at Garage Repair Toronto, and so good. Like, amazing haircut. I love the layers. I didn't style it perfectly today. It's the second day blowout, but I love it so much. I feel like it just like adds a lot of elevation of class and cuteness to my image. Another big event that recently happened is the US election. And a lot of people were surprised that Trump was elected again. Some of us weren't. He won the popular vote and everything else. And I don't want to get too much into the nitty gritty of politics, but I definitely see a lot of fear coming from the left side and the liberals, and especially minorities and LGBTQ people. And because we do talk about this topic a lot on this channel, I just wanted to extend my, sympathy to people going through a hard time in the US, but also to acknowledge the fact that it's not as bad as you think. And I think that we really need to fight each battle as it comes rather than create extremes and then react emotionally. I don't think that, Trump coming into power is necessarily a surprise personally. I think there's a lot of people, even, people that were more left leaning that are, more centrist or having a lot of issues with some of the the micro movements happening within the trans community and other communities like that as well. I think that we've been pushing things a little bit too far in certain circumstances. We have a little bit of extremism happening on both sides of the political spectrum, and I think it creates more, division, and it's something that ricochets all around the world and creates this ripple effect that's like definitely causing changes and things even in Canada. And I think we just need to be more realistic and really understand where people are coming from, where this confusion is coming from, and why people are maybe prioritizing things like the economy and helping the middle class over helping necessarily micro issues within minorities. I definitely think there's a lot of extremist people in the MAGA movement that feel emboldened to do terrible things when Trump is in power because they say, hey, like most of the people agree with me and they agree with MAGA and their interpretation of MAGA, just like certain individuals will interpret religious scripts and use that to enforce violence onto others. I think there's always going to be extremists in every movement, but we have to keep those MFers in check. That being said, as well, I think that there are some very taboo issues specifically relating to trans people that are just constantly making the headlines. And some of them include trans women competing in women's sports and also allowing children to transition at a very young age. I ultimately, you guys know where I stand. Like, I think that if you're a minor, you should not be accessing surgery of any kind for transitional purposes. Also, I think that, between the doctors, the psychologists, the parents, and years of, prerequisite understanding of gender diversity and everything should be required before puberty blockers are administered because they are in many ways irreversible. I think there's a lot of people in the trans community and on the left side that are afraid to advance research and studies to figure out the long-term happiness and the longevity, even physically, of trans people going through transition. We definitely need more statistics and information because I've always said from the beginning as well, like with trans kids, it's like when you're going through puberty blockers and then you're going on cross-sex hormone therapy, how is that affecting your ability to mature as an adult? How is that affecting your bone makeup? How is that affecting your libido and your ability to achieve an O, like how is that really affecting you? And can we really trust the verbal outcome from these individuals who want to protect their way of life and maybe don't even have a concept of what it's like to mature as an adult with their natal hormones? And so maybe they're not even able to refer to their experience with the same level of clarity that someone who transitioned later in life would be able to refer to it. You know what I mean? And so I think there is something to be said. And I do understand that, there is a social contagion aspect as well. We've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. I'm a trans woman, right? I've known my journey. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone else's journey, but I have seen individuals who maybe are going through other mental health issues that try to find belonging and comfort in a community and try to reimagine the definitions and the boundaries of what it means to be trans and have access to surgeries and things that are irreversible. And then sometimes they regret it afterwards and they say, wow, I wish I dealt with my trauma differently. You know what I mean? And even in some ways, I wonder too myself, like just on a surface level of like, I've gone through some traumatic things in my life. And like, I wonder if I had had access to therapy or to other things, how I would have dealt with things differently. perhaps I still would have transitioned. I don't know. I can't say. And just because, someone might have transitioned for, different reasons doesn't mean it's less valid. But I think it's important to really explore these avenues and to help people at their core rather than like trying to cover things up and put band-aids over it. And we also do have to acknowledge that there is a very monetarily motivated reason for individuals to transition humans because then you're on a lifelong prescription of hormones. You need multi-thousand-dollar surgeries. Sometimes it's a very lucrative industry, and a lot of doctors are privately making tons of income from this. Even in Canada, there's federally funded doctors that make tons and tons of money. And sometimes you're like, okay, this was great, it worked for me, but sometimes you feel like just a cog in a machine because the conveyor belt of people going through these surgeries is so fast and so expeditious that you don't get the proper care that you deserve. You know what I mean? So we have to have like regulations and really explore these industries. And I think that some of the things that Trump was proposing are very mandated and warranted, and they're also very positive and beneficial to the trans community in the long run. Like, why would we not want to, hold people accountable for the services that they offer trans people? Why would we not want to regulate these industries to make sure that they are helping people and not harming them in the long run, So I definitely think that we need to pick and choose our battles. I think that there are a lot of nuanced conversations that need to happen. The people that are the most threatened are the most insecure. I think that if we react to things in a logical way and we really deconstruct where people are coming from, then we can form valid arguments in response and ensure that things are happening for the right reasons rather than just like, saying like, a predator, racist, horrible, disgusting, whatever person is in office, like all these like hyperbolic things. Because yes, we've seen, very controversial things from him. Yes, we've seen like many issues regarding, his personal life and accusations from the 90s, extramarital affairs, things like that for sure. We've seen it across the political spectrum as well. And I think that we just need to continue holding people accountable for those things, especially when they're representing us in office. But at the same time, it really is true that policy over person is quite a more logical way of looking at things. I don't think that inferring someone's ability or skill set is directly correlated to the way that they choose to live their lives or their morals is 100% accurate. And I think a lot of the times people on the left side and people on the right side too, but a lot of people that are incapable of critical thinking, they resort to insults, name calling, and basically creating false equivalencies by comparing, Trump slept with a porn star allegedly. Therefore, he should have no comment on, the nuclear family or families across America or representing family values, even if his policies do reflect the family values you want. He's incapable of, having any positive contributions because he had an affair, It's like a false equivalency in my mind. And I find, especially on the left side and the liberal side, we react a little bit more emotionally and we create a lot of false equivalencies. And I think that that needs to stop because it discredits our ability to form proper arguments and it makes us look silly in the long run. That's pretty much my wrap up for politics on this episode. And that's not to say I'm not like disappointed in some ways and I'm not, still more of a center, slightly left-leaning person. I totally am, and I'm all for the individual making their own decisions. I'm not for the government telling people how to live their lives, and stuff like that. And I also can't really talk too much about, the abortion debate because it's not my position to have an opinion because it's not my body. I can't get pregnant. You know what I mean? I think that up to a certain point, abortion should totally be legal. I'm not sure what that point is, in my opinion. I guess like, maybe 3 to 4 months or something like that. Maybe 2 to 3 months. I'm not sure. I'd have to like really research the development of how like the fetus develops and everything. Obviously, I think like at a certain point, like you're like 7, 8, 9 months and the baby like could be born and be viable, then I think that's kind of a different topic. But also, we want to make sure people are having access to healthcare regardless. and are given options. And it's not so taboo. We don't want to shame people. Another thing I wanted to jump into as well, because we talk about dating all the time on here, and every time I go live, I always get questions. Are you seeing anyone yet? Are you going on dates? Like, what's happening with that? And I will say I went on a few dates in September with someone, and they were really nice, and I still like kept in contact and am friendly with them, but just didn't end up working out for several reasons. And then I took like a break for like, I want to say almost 2 months of like going on dates because I just was feeling a little bit drained. I'm not someone who likes to just casually date all the time and meet new people and like see where things go. I find it very emotionally exhausting. Like, I can't help it, you know? I feel like meeting new people, having new energies in my life, it takes a lot out of me. I do enjoy the aspect of socializing and going out and like, I will meet strangers on Hinge, for drinks and stuff. And like, I think it can be fun, but it is very exhausting, especially as a trans person. I think that you're always trying to find ways to navigate the space in a way that is true for you, but also respectful of the other parties as well. And it's always something I've like disclosed on my profiles. And up until like the last 2 weeks, I want to say, maybe a week and a half, it has not been that long. I decided to just make my gender not visible on my profiles because I was receiving some questionable attention from strange men. Because, anyone can see your profile, and you can start to see now on apps like Hinge the people that have liked your profile and sending you messages and stuff. And I just like started to notice a pattern with some of the messages I was receiving, and it was like unwanted attention and creepy vibes. And when you put stuff on your profile that's so personal like that, it sometimes opens up conversation for people, or they feel emboldened to start conversations that are much more invasive personally than what you would on average be comfortable sharing with a stranger. Like, so many encounters where like I've had to explain myself and my history and everything to someone who wouldn't be interested anyways. You know what I mean? So I felt like a little fatigued with all of that. And then on top of that, just people that don't even read your profile anyways. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take it off for a bit. I'm going to see like if anyone's interested in me. I'll try like going for drinks and just chat with them and then tell them if I like them, because I want to reclaim the power in my court. I think to a certain degree, if you are asking someone out and stuff like that, and you're making assumptions about them, that the ball is not in my court to disclose. Obviously, like if things get serious, for sure, and I agree. But I don't think I owe someone an explanation about my identity in my life. I fully transitioned, baby. Like, I have nipped and tucked what I needed to do. I pass in almost every regard. And this experience that I'm going to talk about is a testament to that. So, this guy that I think I matched with, like all the way back in the early summer, he was messaging me in July, and then September, and then October. And then finally at the end of October, I answered him. And yeah, and so all that to say, he would have matched with me when I had it on my profile, because only for the past like week and a half I took it off. And he was, just this like very typical like corporate lawyer guy. Nothing crazy remarkable or interesting about him. He was very like averagely attractive, and I thought, you know what, he seems like a very chill guy. I had a conversation with him over the DMs, and I was like, I guess, my biggest red flags in a guy are if he's not open-minded, kind, and, positive and blah, blah, blah. And then he said to me like, oh, what do you mean by open-minded? And I was like, well, like supportive of LGBT people and not being like discriminatory and stuff like that. That's basically my way of like trying to vet someone to see like, is there potential here? And he responded to that query with, I feel like it's just older generations that are more closed-minded like that. Younger people are pretty open. And I was like, well, you'd be surprised. You know what I mean? But then we didn't really talk too much more about that. He seemed pretty enamored with me. He eventually asked me out to go to this like semi-nice place on King West for drinks. And so I literally ate a Big Mac before I went on this date, because I was like, I'm not going to get food on this date, and it's just drinks, and we're just going to chat, and I'll get to know him and decide if I like him. And then eventually, obviously, I would have the conversation with him, the disclosure. And so I got my makeup and hair on, looking gorgeous. My hair on. I just like styled my hair. I was honestly looking so good that night, you guys. And I Ubered over, we chatted. I will say, like, there were some superficial things about him that I wasn't super attracted to, but I'm an open-minded person too. And hey, if someone's going to accept me, I'm going to have a little bit more leniency and a little bit more understanding and acceptance for someone as well if there's things that they can't change about themselves or, that make them different. And for him, I noticed he had like an enormous lisp when I first met him. And he also had like the shortest fingernails of any guy I've ever seen because he must be like biting them off down to the bone. So those were just like the two superficial things I noticed. And it kind of took me out of it a little bit. And now that's not to say like I have an issue with people who have lisps and anything like that. Like I think it's totally fine. And it's something I don't even notice over time. One of my exes, Loki had a lisp as well. It wasn't as pronounced as this guy's lisp. His was like pretty, intense. But my ex had a lisp as well. It was like a slight lisp. And this comes back into the story later. So that's why I'm bringing it up. But I will say, like, throughout the day, I just like kind of, stopped noticing it. He kind of gave me insecure vibes before the date, and I think that should have been a red flag to me. He very much like held me on this pedestal and knew that I had, quite a large following online. He added me on social media. Also, all the signs were there for him to be able to like find out that I was trans. Like I don't hide it. I'm proud of who I am. It's on my social media, it's on my YouTube. It was on my profile when he matched with me. But I knew that there was a high chance he probably didn't know when he asked me out for drinks, which is totally like fine. And I could have clarified with him before I went for drinks. But again, I was trying this new method where I wanted to just see if I could have the power in the ball in my court about when I talk about it and how much I want to talk about. You know what I mean? And yeah, we'll get into this later as well. This whole thing about shame and disclosure and like being trans and stuff like that. But basically, I was on this date with him, and our conversation, I would rate the date like a 7 out of 10. I do think that as we drank more alcohol, he was like buying old fashions and stuff. As we drank more alcohol, it was like easier to talk. So it wasn't necessarily an organic connection. It was kind of fueled by that. And I did not make physical contact with him at all every so often throughout the conversation. Like as we drank more, he would like touch my arm playfully or whatever, like while having a conversation. But it was giving platonic, even though I knew he was trying to flirt. He was kind of awkward and a little bit just awkward. I don't know if I was just reading into that too much because of the lisp and stuff, but I don't know. He wasn't super, super confident. And he tried to go on this spiel about how he had like dated actresses and models previously. And I was just kind of like rolling my eyes in my head. Like he clearly was trying to overcompensate for the fact that he felt like he was a little bit out of his league with me. And that was kind of eye opening to me as well. Regardless, I thought the date went decently, and I just didn't know if I was super into him, like feeling chemistry. I just felt like I am more of an artsy person, more of a creative type, and he was giving me like bland, boring blah. Like we didn't have anything in common really, like nothing. Like he knew nothing about my world, and I knew like a little bit about his, but like not enough to keep me interested. And yeah, also he was like originally from Alberta, I believe. And so that's like the Texas of Canada. Should have known. Should have mother effing known. Anyways, so the date's over. I walked to go to my streetcar stop because it's on the same road as where I live, pretty much, just like on the other side of the city, not too far, like maybe a 10-minute streetcar ride. So I was like, I'm literally just gonna hop on here and I'll be home in a jiffy. And I walked with him a little bit, and he was very into me. I could 100% tell. He was like enamored. And I said goodbye to him, and he said, kiss on the cheek. And I was like, sure, whatever. I gave him like a light kiss on the cheek. I will say, you guys, my lips didn't touch his cheek like I did an air kiss, like like that, and then left. There was no, there's no like physical contact that was like non-consensual or anything like that. And also, that whole topic as well is silly. Anyways, we'll get into it because fast forward to this week. He asks me immediately after the date that we went on, like to see me again the next week. And then he starts planning the date on last Sunday. Yeah, he's like, oh, let's go to a comedy show. Let's go here. Let's do this or blah, blah, blah. And then Monday morning rolls around at 9 a.m. He messages me and he's like, so I saw your YouTube. And that's something that I feel like should have been disclosed on your profile. I'm not even interested in the slightest, in the slightest, or something like that. Like he wouldn't even say the words. And he was so dramatic about it. And I took the mother effing high road and I was like, you know what? Like, I definitely thought there was a chance that he didn't know and also that he wouldn't be interested. But I'm just going to be graceful and classy about this and also, just like speak my truth at the same time. And I'm not even really that interested in this man. And I said this to my friend right after the first date. I'm going to potentially give him a second chance with a second date just to affirm that I'm not really that into him because, when you first meet someone, there might be nerves, there might be pressure. You might not really be seeing them for who they are for the fullest. And so you need to like give them a minute to shine. And so I said like I might consider going on a second date with him because I don't know if I really got the full him, and if I did, I wouldn't be interested, but I might give him a second date. And so when he was eager to plan a second date, I was kind of like, okay, sure, I'll do it. But no, he canceled it. And I was kind of in my head thinking, like, thank God. Because, like, I just knew in the long run it probably wasn't going to work out. We're just too different of people. So I basically said to him, I was like, I totally understand if you're surprised by that. That being said, I do keep my identity. I don't keep it a secret or anything like that, but I said, like, I do wish to discuss it when I deem right. And it's something I would have brought up after the second or third date if I felt like things were going somewhere. However, like, I do prefer to have things not on my profile at the moment for privacy and security reasons. And I hope you can respect that. And he basically was like, understood, but I think you should disclose it on your profile. Like, I think you owe that to every guy pretty much. And so I responded and I was like, well, I understand why you would feel that way. However, like, just so you know, it was on my profile when we matched. Most guys don't normally read it or they don't care or, they start categorizing me different from other people and they expect me to sound a certain way, look a certain way, be a certain way, and they judge me. And I would rather someone get to know me first and then I tell them than have it be the other way around. And he basically was like, I would think that a guy would either be okay with it from day one or not okay with it at all, blah, 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 blah. And like to that, I will say, like, maybe on average for sure. But in my life experience, and he wouldn't know this because he's not me, but in my life experience, sometimes it's not always like that. Sometimes you meet someone and they are like so shocked, like he was, that, I've gone through the journey I've gone through and it opens their mind a bit. I've had encounters from guys on Hinge who like, they're like, wait a minute, I didn't read your profile and I didn't know you were trans. And then I'm like, no worries, like all the best. And then they come back a week later and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm rethinking everything. You've made me reconsider everything. You know what I mean? Like you end up being this like epiphany moment for them. And so to discount my entire being because of a label and to tell me that I have to project that label to every single person and owe them my invasive personal details, regardless of whether or not it puts me in danger, is very selfish mentality and it's very insecure. And clearly this man was coming from a place of insecurity. I normally would understand, like in certain circumstances, like, oh, I'm surprised that you didn't tell me beforehand. Like I would assume that you would rather have someone like every aspect of you. And I'm like, yeah, I would. And that is why I would tell you because I do believe that. And it's also not something I keep a secret. And you've had access to this social media and you found my YouTube because I gave you access to it. Like this was the bare minimum research you could have done about me. You know what I mean? Like it's not something I'm hiding. And all we did was chat over drinks. There was no, and he basically tried to frame it as like a consent issue, and he was like, I should have been consenting over physical contact, like as in like even being in the same space as me, like not literal contact, like just like he considered a date to be physical contact. I don't know. And I just found that so telling because it's like you are clearly very insecure about even being in the same space as me. It says more about you than it does about me. And then I started thinking back to maybe his lisp, maybe certain things he was saying to me before the date about how he's not some big guy who's like super jacked, how he's not super tall, he's only 6 foot. Like if I want some like, super attractive, super athletic, super whatever guy, it's not going to be him. Like that's what he was implying. And that was like giving your insecure vibes. And I said to him like previously, like I was like, I wouldn't have swiped for you if I didn't find you at least attractive enough to go on a date with. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of his insecurities jumped out, and it made me realize like this whole game we're playing where like, trans women are in a separate category or doing whatever and we're like not as valued. It's all like a game of insecurities. He's not into me. We know he was into me. We know he was obsessed. We know he was texting me 10 minutes after the first date. We know he was asking for a second date. I saw the glimmer in his eyes. Like I felt like he thought he was on a date with like a supermodel. Like that was the vibe I was getting. He was both excited, both insecure, and both eager to like try to hold on to me. And so the fact that this label is what has deterred him has proved to me that not only am I extremely attractive, personable, and a catch in person and online, but that the label of being trans is just a superficial insecurity for men that don't have the confidence and care way too much about what other people think about themselves to live their authentic lives. You know what I mean? And obviously, like having kids, doing whatever, you'll never know if you'll run into fertility issues with someone who's born female. There's so many things that we can deconstruct and whatever. And what it comes down to in this moment, and I've realized in life, is that men are more afraid of what other people think of them, questioning their sexuality and their manhood, than they are actually prejudiced against trans people or not attracted to trans people. It's just not the case. You know what I mean? Like if I just didn't tell you and I kept everything a secret and I was super stealthy, like you would be into me like point blank. That's not to say I think that's the right thing to do because I don't. Like we as trans women need to find people that respect and love us in our entirety and in our journey, and that's like what I've always tried to do. That's what my relationships in the past have been. But it is affirming to know because this kind of leads into my next topic, which is shame. We're always made to feel ashamed for our identity. I think that when people clown us all the time, it's attached to the word trans. Like, I'm not into that in the slightest. I'm not, you'll never be a real woman. Like, all these things that are thrown at us. If we remove the fact that we're trans from the equation and we just live as human beings like anyone else, then we can really hold ourselves in high esteem and confidence and have higher standards for ourselves and stop lowering our standards and thinking that we don't deserve as much as other people because we definitely do. If you work hard and you slay hard and you're hot as fuck, like why do you not deserve the best out there? And I've kind of realized that it's the way it is. It's crazy, but it's interesting to kind of deconstruct that in a way. And in some ways, this date kind of felt like a social experiment. I feel like we're always learning new things in life, and it's informing the way that we move through the world. And I learned in this situation that there are men that are inherently not confident. There are men that like I in the past maybe felt like shitty about because I was like, wow, they rejected me because I'm trans. Maybe they have higher value in society. Maybe like, another girl will be the girl of his dreams and it's because she's not trans. You know what I mean? But then I realized, like, through this dating process, I'm like, this guy that just rejected me, like, I think I was way out of his league and he's rejecting me because he's insecure. And it has nothing to do with value of, appearance, of personality, of lifestyle, or, like, it has nothing to do with any of those things. It just has to do with compatibility. Like, we were fundamentally not compatible. And I respect that. And I also very much respect his decision to not want to pursue a relationship with a trans woman. That's totally fine. And I'm totally like, everyone has the right to date who they want to date for whatever reason. But that being said, I'm not going to hold shame over my head and think that I'm not as valuable because I'm trans, because you rejected me because I'm trans. The way that I perceive it now has shifted. And I think that that's really important for self-confidence. So, all that to say, removing the trans aspect from the equation has allowed me to view myself with a bit more confidence and a bit more integration with society, and to just know that I deserve love and respect like anyone else. And you will find people out there who will achieve those things for you. It might be harder for us, because of the social stigma, because of the political climate, because people feel emboldened to treat you poorly. And you deserve just as much as anyone else to go out and meet people. Like, according to this guy, like, I should be like wearing a sign on my forehead and disclosing it to every man I talk to. And that's absolutely crazy to me. Like, first and foremost, functionality in life. We step outside of our front doors. We don't know who we're going to meet. We don't know what we're going to do. You don't know where we're going to go or always end up. I like to go out to parties. I like to go to bars. I like to do things. I like to live my life like any other MFing human being. I'm not walking around with a billboard on my forehead. And it's also just not super relevant to most of the things that you do in your daily life. So I think understanding time and place of when you disclose things and understanding that your value is so much more than just a label will do wonders for you. And it's pretty crazy because, I see the way I move through the world, and I think I'll save this for another podcast episode. But I think I would like to deep dive into what it's like living as not only a passable trans woman, but a perceivably attractive possible trans woman, because it's such a different world. Like, I have some trans friends, and the way that I've moved through the world has been quite different. We all have our own unique experiences, but I unfortunately haven't really had like a super close knit queer friend group, and so I've always kind of been thrust into the threshold of the heteronormative cisgender straight world. That's just been the way that I've lived my life. And so I've seen firsthand what it's like to receive a lot of unwanted attention and to have to decide when to walk away or when to disclose or when to engage, and also just the negative aspects of that and the positives. And so I'll talk about that in a future podcast. I know the dolls love to hear about that kind of stuff, especially like trans girls that are like newly transitioning and they don't know what to expect and what life is like on the other side. I get asked all the time, what's it like being, attractive towards men specifically? Like, is it all it's cracked up to be? Or is it dangerous? Is it whatever? And I feel like, there's a lot of sociological things we can explore there. And I'm not coming at this from a conceited perspective. I know my life. I know what happens when I leave my front door. And sometimes it can be very disastrous. And I think it's the same for women in general. When you're perceived a certain way, I think in society we hold like looks on a pedestal and we think, oh, their life must be so easy. But you don't see a lot of the negative aspects and a lot of the false value that we place onto appearance when it becomes the thing that most people appreciate us for. And so I think exploring that in the next podcast episode, we'll have a whole deep dive. I think it would be really interesting. Let me know what you thought about today's episode. I feel like it was very candid and off the cuff, and just me trying to talk about my experiences in real time almost because it's so fresh. But at the end of the day, like, my goal is always to respect others and to be respected myself, and I would never want to make someone uncomfortable. And I always try to conduct myself with grace and dignity in every situation, because those who can respond with politeness and grace have, the upper hand in most situations. And when you treat others with kindness, it comes back to you tenfold. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast episode. I will see you guys next time. And thank you so much to everyone who is in the Brain Rot membership program, especially the Brain Rot producers. You're going to have your little credit roll for the first time at the end of this segment. And I will see you guys next time.
Special thanks to Brain Rot producers.